In this lecture, you'll learn about the accordion component. With this component, you can build vertically collapsing accordions using Bootstrap's Collapse plugin. Here we see the accordion component in action. First, we have the default one. We can see that the first item is open on page load or active. When we click another one, the currently open one will close and the new one will expand, which we can see right here. If we click and open one more time, it will collapse as well. So the whole accordion is collapsed, but only one at a time can be expanded. Down here we have a flush version where we can see that some of the borders has been removed along the edges of the accordion so it can better fit inside, for example, a card component. Now let's see how we create this. In the code editor, we'll start by creating the default one. We start by adding a div tag with the class accordion, and we'll give it the ID accordion default. Inside of this, we'll add a div tag with the class accordion item. We'll create 3 items for this example as we just saw before. Then we'll add an accordion header using an h2 heading element with the class accordion header, and the ID will be heading default 1. Inside of this heading element, we'll first add a button, type button, and the class will be accordion button. Then we'll add the data BS toggle attribute with the value collapse to hook this up to the JavaScript. We'll also add the data BS target attribute with the value being the ID of the content for this item, which we'll create in a moment. So this will be collapse default 1. We'll just wrap the line like so we can better see. And then for accessibility, we add the area expanded attribute with the value true and the area controls attribute with the value collapse default 1. So these two are referring to the same thing. Here we must use an ID selector. This last one, area controls, will always be an ID selector, so we shouldn't include this here. Alright, we can now add text for our button, which will be accordion item number 1. Now after this heading element, we'll create a new div tag with the ID collapse default 1, which we just used 2 times above, and then we'll add the class accordion collapse as well as collapse and show. We'll also add the area labeled by attribute with the value heading default 1, which we used previously, and we'll add the data BS parent attribute with the value being the hash symbol and accordion default. So this is an ID selector that we used up here, the ID. Alright, inside of this we can now create our accordion button by using a div tag with the class accordion body. Oh, excuse me, I said button before, I meant body. So we are creating our accordion body. Now I'll just grab this random text here that we're using in the reference version and paste it in like so. Now the first item is complete, and we'll mark all of this and paste it in once. Then we'll update and change some values. First we have the heading default 1, which is referenced in the ID, and the area labeled by attributes. We'll change these to heading default 2. Now we'll also take a look at this value, collapse default 1, which is being used 3 times. This should be changed to collapse default 2, like so. And now we have one more thing to change. So since this is not the currently active one, the previous one was the active item, but this should be closed, we need to change a few things. So here for the button, we need to add the class collapsed, so it becomes accordion button and collapsed. And down here, we need to remove the class show. Now let's copy and paste this code here for this item to create our third item. And let's adjust these values to 3 and these 3 values as well. We'll change this text to 3, and I forgot to change it up here to 2. And we'll keep the classes here for the accordion button with the extra class collapsed, and here we will also keep this without the class show. This is only for the first active item. Now let's save this, go back and select the screencast tab, and here we see it in action. We can see that only one at a time can be open, and we can click the currently open one to close the accordion totally, like so. Now let's see how we can create the flushed version where some of the borders has been removed. So we will start by copying all of this code here, like so, and pasting it in. Then we'll need to update several values. We'll select this default text here in the ID and select all these instances. I'm using Command D on my Mac right now. Or just be careful to select all of these. Like so. I'll change this word to flush. So now it's been changed all over. And now this should work independently next to the other accordion. But to make this a flushed accordion, we need to add the modifier class accordion flush right here to the parent element. We'll save, go back, refresh. Here we see the 2 independently accordions, and we can see that the second one doesn't have a border alongside its outer edges like the first one has. So this is the flushed version of the accordion. And this was all about how you can use accordions with Bootstrap.